I'm Marc with Ooika, and in this video, I'm going to be reacting to the most popular video on YouTube for Matcha 101. This is a beginner video by Clean and Delicious. She has 2 million subscribers, and this video has 1.8 million views. So right on the surface, this is really good news. It means that more people are getting interested in matcha. I haven't actually watched this video yet, so I'm excited to see. Is the information very clear and easy for beginners to understand? Is it accurate?
I'm gonna cover everything you need to know about this bright, beautiful superfood. So what is matcha? It is a young, delicate, high-grade green tea leaf that is grown in the shade for about 3 weeks before it's hand-picked, dried, and ground into a fine powder.
That's a good description of what matcha is, I think. I might add that matcha is also from Japan. If you're drinking what you think is matcha, but it's not from Japan, it's not a matcha. It must be from Japan. But I think that's a great way to describe it.
Another result of growing in the shade is an amino acid called L-Theanine. And this is said to be the magic ingredient that helps to reduce anxiety and enhance mood, all while boosting concentration, focus, and alertness.
So when you have high-grade matcha and you're drinking it and you taste that amazing sweetness and savoriness, that's because of the L-Theanine, which is in high amounts due to the shading. If you don't shade matcha, if you don't shade tea, it will still have L-Theanine, but it'll be a much lower level.
Now, matcha does contain caffeine, but because of the way the body digests it, it's released at a slow and steady rate. So unlike, say, drinking a cup of coffee, where a lot of people will get a spike and then a crash, the matcha gives you a more sustained, steady rate.
And part of that is because of the L-Theanine. L-Theanine passes the blood-brain barrier, it makes you feel calm, and it has a complex interaction with the caffeine. So with matcha, you're not gonna get, like she said, those really sharp spikes up or down. You won't get jitters. It's much more manageable. Matcha is a complex drink, and we wanna think about it more than just a drink that has antioxidants and a drink that has caffeine. Yes, it has those things, but actually the health benefits of matcha, which are really big, are actually probably what's least interesting about matcha.
There's 2 main types of matcha, ceremonial and culinary. Now, ceremonial matcha is made from the youngest, finest tea leaves. And so it has a very...
The words ceremonial and culinary are not exactly grades. They're more like, let's say, intent of the manufacturer. They're marketing terms like economy or premium. When you read a matcha that's labeled as ceremonial, what that represents is the maker of that matcha saying, hey, this matcha is good enough for you to drink by itself with water and no other added flavors. However, that doesn't mean that the matcha itself is made with the first spring harvest, as Clean and Delicious is alluding to. The quality of that ceremonial may be very high or very low. In fact, one company's lowest culinary grade may be another company's highest ceremonial grade.
When you are selecting a ceremonial matcha, you want to have a vibrant green color with a light, fresh, slightly grassy smell. It should also be extremely fine to the touch. It's almost like an eyeshadow.
Color is a big topic with matcha because it's very easy for me as a producer of video content to show color in my video and give a beginner an indication of how to understand the quality of matcha, right? Generally speaking, but not always, bright green neon matcha, the higher the color contrast, the higher the intensity, is going to be a higher quality matcha. I said in general, that isn't always the case. And that's because there are specific varieties, cultivars, of the tea plant that are grown specifically for its color and not for its taste. So in many cases, what tea companies will do is they'll do blends. Well, they'll take some of the good tasting but not colorful tea and some of the colorful but not very good tasting tea, and they mix it together. What that means is that the color is not necessarily an indicator of the quality or the taste of the tea at all. In fact, with Ooika, we do a lot of single cultivar milling. Certain cultivars look amazing, the color is incredible, but they just don't taste as good. They're not as vibrant and complex and full-bodied as other cultivars that don't have the degree of color, but they taste a lot more interesting.
Culinary matcha, on the other hand, is a mix of the younger and the older tea leaves. So while it still has a very fresh flavor, it tends to be a little more earthy and robust.
When it comes to harvesting tea, there are different seasons. So the most important, the best season is spring, because it's had the year to develop all the flavors and then the first spring shoots are going to be the best. Culinary matcha will typically be later harvest, so summer, autumn. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're picking more mature leaves on the bush. They just may be using more mature harvests.
Culinary matcha also has a lower price point. So this is the matcha you want to use if you're going to add it to your smoothies, your breakfast bowls, your oatmeal, your baked goods, etc.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not just about the price being lower that you'd want to use it for, let's say, your matcha latte, but it's also because the lower quality matcha, culinary matcha, will be more bitter and astringent. And when you're mixing in, let's say, milk and cream and sugar and different flavoring, the taste of the matcha will basically vanish because it's so subtle. So you want a stronger, more assertive matcha, culinary grade matcha usually, that can hold up against these very strong additional flavors.
Whichever matcha you're buying, what you want to be looking for is origin. Most good matchas come from Japan. Color, texture, taste, and price.
I think that's a great way to put it. The price is an important one in there. Yes, you can go out and spend $1,000 on the most expensive bottle of Bordeaux, but on a hot summer day after you've been working outside in the sun, what you want is a cheap beer, a domestic cheap beer. If the price corresponds to the quality of the material, well, that's what makes it a good matcha in my opinion.
You pretty much get what you pay for. A good ceremonial matcha can cost you anywhere between $25 and $40 for an ounce, which is the equivalent of 30 grams.
Okay, so that range is interesting. $40 for 30 grams of matcha. That would actually be a middle to low tier matcha. I'm saying that because in order to produce a high grade matcha where you're hand picking, where you're shading using traditional reed straw, where you're shading it for long durations, which take a lot of manpower to maintain the shading. And on top of all of that, you're stone milling it. All of that adds up. And I don't think this video is too old where inflation would go crazy, 5 years, well, maybe. But for a good quality matcha, you're going to expect to pay at least $40 to $50. And for a very high grade matcha, you can expect to pay up to $100. You do get what you pay for, and you absolutely can tell the difference between a lower price matcha and a higher price matcha, assuming there's honesty in the labeling.
The matcha that I have been using and really enjoying is from a company called the Matcha Reserve.
All right, she's doing her bump, I'm gonna do mine. Ooika operates one of the only traditional Japanese stone mills in the United States where we mill matcha fresh. Matcha is sort of like coffee, where once you roast it and you grind it, you kind of want to drink it right away. You wouldn't want to take coffee that's been roasted 6 months or a year ago, drink it today. Well, matcha, because the particles are ground so small, is actually more delicate than coffee. So after just 1 month of being ground into powder, it's already lost a fair amount of the taste and vibrancy. And by 6 months old, it's lost 30% of all its antioxidant potential, and that is a big loss. The problem is, most matcha by the time it gets into the United States, let alone is sold to you, is months, if not already a year old. Personally, I would not drink matcha that's that old, I would just throw it away. So you can check out ooika.co in the description and get some high-grade, fresh ground matcha with clear, precise labeling all the way down to the individual farms and farmers' names that the matcha comes from.
Very sensitive to light and heat. And that's why you'll see that most good matchas are sold in a foil packet or a dark container.
Matcha is vulnerable to heat, as Clean and Delicious rightfully mentioned. Matcha should never be kept at room temperature until you've opened it. If it's kept at room temperature, or worse, even hotter, let's say, on a cargo ship, it will very rapidly lose its vibrancy, its freshness, its taste. So any producer, retailer that really knows their stuff and actually really cares and respects the material will make sure that it's kept cold, that it's kept dark, cold, and air sealed.
Do not drink your matcha every single day, then I would recommend storing it in the fridge or the freezer.
Freezer is not necessary, and I'd recommend not storing it in the freezer. The fridge is totally fine. One thing I'd recommend if you do store your matcha in the refrigerator after you've broken the seal is the matcha powder is extremely susceptible to moisture. The second you open a cold jar in a warm room, the humidity is going to rush in and spoil the matcha. So if you keep it in the fridge after you've broken the seal, when you take it out to make your matchas, open it, get the matcha powder out as fast as you can, seal it, again, put it back in the fridge.
I'm gonna show you how to make a ceremonial matcha tea and a matcha latte. So for an 8-ounce cup of matcha tea, what you're gonna do is take a teaspoon of the matcha powder and run it through your sifter. Then I'll add just a couple ounces of hot water. Now you don't want your water to be boiling hot. You want it to be just before boiling or nice and steamy.
That's a good tip. You definitely do not want to use boiling water. You will scald the tea and you'll get funky flavors like overcooked spinach. So avoid very hot flavors. But from what I see, it looks like her ratio looks pretty good. I would use 2 grams of matcha and 50 milliliters of water. It's actually a small amount. I've seen a lot of people, beginners, they make matcha with way too much water. If you do too much water, it becomes very difficult to whisk. You want to be able to drink your matcha within 3 sips.
Once you've got your paste and you see the froth has formed, then we're gonna add another 4 to 6 ounces of water, transfer this into your favorite.
If you went a little overboard on the water, that's, in my opinion, far too much. You should have enough water in here that you can drink within 3 sips. If you put this much water in, you're going to over dilute the taste of the matcha. And if it's a high grade matcha, you probably don't want to do that. Clean and delicious. Overall, I thought her video was good. I think her matcha could use a little bit less water. Clean and Delicious did a very good job with her video, and I hope that my video reacting to it can help encourage you to learn about the connoisseurship of matcha, the experience of actually drinking it and appreciating this very incredible drink, which really has no rival. Maybe in wine, but in wine, you're getting drunk, right? So in this, you can stay focused, you can sharpen your brain instead of soften it. Thank you for watching. If there's any matcha videos that you'd like me to react to and give feedback on, be sure to post them below. And of course, I've put a link to Clean and Delicious's video in the pinned comment below so you can go watch it for yourself. Take it easy, guys. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.